Previously on A Band Called Punchline.
Well, I guess if I'm not going to do college, then I should probably hustle and make this happen.
We just always kept moving the goalpost back, and that was our next goal. We kept attaining things that we thought maybe we were never going to do.
When the time is right, the right label is going to come to us.
I might even say we kind of forgot about labels until we were eventually approached.
Fueled by Ramen was absolutely a label that we were familiar with. And they had a cool reputation. It just seemed like they were about the music.
It was just the type of thing where you would look left and right and kind of ask yourself, is this really happening?
The power went out right before our set. So, there we were, all of these people, probably more people than we ever played in front of at Laga, and we had no way to play.
We had the luxury of writing music that was musically interesting to us and not really having to worry about fitting any type of formula.
Being able to laugh with your friends is something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
But you can't go wrong with Adventures in Cooking with Uncle Chris.
Everybody's doing the food dance.
As far as I knew, nobody in our inner circle was using any hard drugs.
That's where we learned what to do when your van wheels just fly off of the axle.
The year 2003 was gearing up to be the most exciting yet for Punchline. Having signed a Florida-based independent record label Fueled by Ramen, the time had come to record the full-length album that would put the band on the map and into the ears of people all over the world. Guitarist and vocalist Steve Sabosley remembers.
We were on the way to making our first full-length for a record label. And previously, the Rewind EP had 4 songs, clearly an EP. Major Motion Picture had 8 songs, less than a typical full length. And then our first 2 CDs before that, at this point we weren't even kind of considering as being a part of our discography.
Former Punchline drummer PJ Caruso.
Technically, this was not our first full length, but it's the first one that we acknowledge.
We knew this was a big deal. And like we had done before, we followed our gut on who to record with. And this was all a game that involved a lot of magic, but who's giving you a good feeling? What does it seem like the next logical step? Taking the next logical step based on this bit of a magical feeling has gotten us this far, so let's keep going with that. And we had been in the studio with Sean O'Keefe and Fall Out Boy and hearing the magic that he did on their recording. So, can we get in with him?
Bassist Chris Fafalius.
He was from our world of music, and he really understood the sound that we were going for. And we heard that not only in the Fall Out Boy recording, but also other Chicago bands like Spitalfield, Split Habit, 504 Plan. And we were just like, wow, this sounds really, really good.
Former Punchline guitarist and vocalist Paul Menatiades.
Going with Sean was a no-brainer. Based on Take This to Your Grave, we knew we wanted to record with him. The music sounded like it was well performed and clean and on great gear and just natural sounding.
Before we made any grand plans of going to Chicago and recording an entire album, we had to record some songs, at least demo style, first.
The old Mr. Smalls closed and the new Mr. Smalls venue opened up, but it had a little recording studio in it, and we went there and recorded a new song called Heart Transplant. Even a heart transplant wouldn't show you how I feel, would it, baby? Tearing up my path now. Wouldn't show you how I feel, would it now? We put it out on a little sampler CD that was black and white, and it had Play, Heart Transplant, and I Don't Know on it, but it was kind of looked more like the Rewind EP feel, and that it was all black and white. And we had Heart Transplant in this old version of it for a while before we went and re-recorded it with Action.
It feels like Heart Transplant instantly became the hit among people that liked our band, thanks to things like the sampler it was out on, but also the fact that people were downloading music on the internet probably more than ever at this point.
The song Heart Transplant was about a breakup that cut me deeply. And I remember having the line and the melody, even a heart transplant, kind of in my head, and I could tell it was something cool, and I sat on it for a while. And I remember when I finally sat down and picked up a guitar and tried to flesh it out into like a fuller idea, just everything really came out. And that song is pretty wordy, but boy, when it all came out, it happened really, really fast.
It was a catchy, relatable punk song about getting your heart broken, and people were hungry for that sort of song. I think people are still hungry for that type of song even today.
And then, at practice and on the recording, everything was really musically fleshed out.
I don't remember what venue it was, but Punchline played a venue and there was a guy performing just acoustic guitar and vocals. And, Dashboard Confessional was huge at the time, or blowing up, And I wish I remember this guy's name. He was great. I'm sure Steve remembers, but we brought up Dashboard and he said, yeah, it's okay. It's kind of like what emo kids do when the electricity goes out. Anyway, Steve played Heart Transplant in full at this like open mic night setting. And I'm pretty sure that's where the rest of us heard it in its entirety. We had known the chorus and stuff, but yeah, that was cool. That's a cool memory, watching Steve play one of our songs that would become a song that a lot of people liked.
When we were writing Heart Transplant, I remember our good buddy, Mike Torty, was with us. He was doing some sort of film project for school, I believe. So he came down and filmed our practice, and we were writing Heart Transplant that practice. And oddly enough, Mike was like a hardcore kid, did a lot of hardcore shows up in Erie. So I thought it'd be really funny if, while we were writing it, to just do double bass in a part to see what his reaction would be. And we ended up keeping it in the song.
Everyone around us was living their normal lives, and our lives were just what we did, with playing shows and recording and always on to the next thing. But by this point, the friends we were in college with were getting into their careers. Our first friends bought their houses, and people were living their lives. It was a strange concept, what we were doing. And I think as our friends started to get into their lives, there started to be more of this contrast.
There was no plan B. It was, we were going to be in a band and we were going to take it as far as we could. And I had no other sort of distraction from that goal. Of course, there were distractions in general, but as far as Punchline goes, it was always the priority, and there was no doubt we were going to do this.
To us, it didn't really seem weird what we were doing with our lives in comparison to everyone else we knew, because it was all we really knew. It's all I knew from high school until that point. I was in a band, and we made CDs and played shows, and that was what we did.
But I think when people started, settling into their lives a little bit, it gave us more notice, like, what are we doing? Is this cool?
I don't think that I stopped and realized how cool it was, what was going on at that time, because it just felt like normal everyday life.
The wheels had fallen off of our black van, and we got a new van.
All the love in the world for conversion vans. I don't think you're going to meet 4 dudes that like conversion vans more than us 4. But the first 15-passenger van we got was just glorious. This thing was primer gray. It looked like it just didn't get a final coat of paint from the shop, or like from the manufacturer or whatever.
The gray Dodge 15-passenger van didn't last that long because the transmission went bad, like everyone told us was going to happen with the Dodge 15-passenger van. But then we got a white Ford 15-passenger van, which was much better.
White van, black trailer. We got a clothing endorsement from this company, Ezekiel, and they would just send us every season for maybe 2 years, would send us a big box of clothes that would have jeans and button-up shirts type stuff.
Fueled by Ramen hooked up a endorsement with Ezekiel clothing, which some of you may remember from being in PacSun, and I actually got an Ezekiel shirt from Stitch Fix like a year ago, which I didn't even know Ezekiel still existed. But I remember thinking that was the coolest thing in the world to get free clothes.
Our wardrobes pretty much consisted only of the t-shirts of the bands that we played shows with and toured with, so When a box of clothes came, it definitely felt like Christmas morning to us.
We had some little arguments over who was going to get the jackets.
You may remember these clothes from our famous giant poster that we had made where we were all wearing Ezekiel clothes and it looked like a Silver Tab jeans ad.
We had this practice space in McKees Rocks where we actually still practice. We left there for a while, but now we're back there.
McKees Rocks seems like it's far from absolutely everywhere in the world. And the fact that they still practice there sometimes, I just feel so bad that Chris has to drive all the way down there because I swear I can get to Ohio before McKees Rocks.
It's definitely worth the hour drive to practice in a dingy storage space next to a strip club and a giant pile of garbage.
For a long time, it was second place for stinkiest building in Pittsburgh, only beat by Garfield Artworks. But since they closed, I mean, they took first place.
We had posters on the wall. Friends would stop by and see us. We would work on songs in the dead of summer, and it would be so hot.
I mean, it wasn't glamorous, but it was pretty cool that we could practice any time of day we wanted, as loud as we wanted, for as long as we wanted, and we wrote a lot of songs there. A lot of magic happened in that building.
Somewhere in this time, I think Fred was helping us get together. Well, you're a band. You need to have a biography. And we got together some kind of biography, and it had some quote in there that I feel like Fred made up a quote. But it was like, parts, parts, parts. We just love coming up with parts for our songs.
Parts, parts, parts. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Fred Shade.
Paul had a hair straightener, and I would use it sometimes too. And I started to develop myself a little weird haircut that my friends called spiders, where it was like I kind of parted the front of my hair down the middle, and then it looked like each side had a little spider on it or something.
Everyone always talks about the awful haircuts that I've had over the years and the various terrible styles, but I'm sorry, Steve's the ultimate winner when it comes to terrible hairstyles with the spiders.
It was like a wet gelled look with little strands that came down over his forehead.
I mean, it was spiked in the back.
During Steve's spider hair phase, he also got these like really pointy studs like in his ears that pointed upward. They were at the top of his ears, and they pointed upward to the sky. And he got that done with our buddy Fish in Detroit.
It didn't look great. This was before MySpace, and MySpace hair was the thing. So I think that I was on the cutting edge.
Steve was definitely one of the pioneers of the early 2000s Warped Tour emo MySpace look.
Punchline knew that finding the right producer was the key to making an impactful and memorable album. It was around this time that a young Chicago-based producer named Sean O'Keefe caught the collective musical attention of all the members of the band. Steve Sabosley recalls.
By this point, we had our fair share of getting excited about stuff that would then not pan out, and you would be bummed about it. But I remember this Sean O'Keefe thing. We wanted him to really produce the album, and I remember getting the word that he was going to do it, and we were going to record it in the summer of 2003.
Hey, I'm Sean O'Keefe, and I produced Action for Punchline.
We went to Chicago to record at this studio that seemed kind of like a makeshift studio in what seemed to be an abandoned building until you got inside.
The studio, I took it over from these guys, and it had this like janky ass air conditioning system that was like some window unit that like went through a hallway and had like janky ductwork. Like the window unit pumped into like this janky ductwork that pumped into the control room, and it totally didn't work. And I remember it getting super hot, and I don't like hot rooms at all. Like studios, and it was making me really annoyed. And I remember like I didn't know anything about air conditioning and like window units, and I went to Best Buy and somebody sold me on the idea that a dehumidifier would cool down a room or something like that. And I bought a fucking dehumidifier and put it in the control room, and it literally didn't do anything to the temperature. And I was like, what the fuck? I was so pissed off, and I totally remember that.
I think it was called the Mission Room at North and Western Ave in Chicago, and it was a hot one. Chicago is usually known for being cold, if you're me, and this summer was a very hot summer. But it was cool because we got to spend an entire, I think a month in Chicago, and we stayed with our friend Jason Double J Link at his house. Bless your soul, Jason. You let us stay at your house for three or 4 weeks. That's so crazy. And those were the best times, man. Whew.
My name is Jason Link, and I'm the senior art director at Epitaph Records. And Punchline stayed at my house while they were recording Action.
Not only let us stay with them, but every weekend throw a party for us and have so many people that we knew over. And it ended up being a great time, but I just have no idea how someone, let alone someone's roommate, would be okay with all these dudes just sleeping all over the place all the time.
During that time, I kind of had an opportunity in a big enough house in Chicago where, bands kind of stayed there, like touring bands, like the Baysides and Punchline and, just a handful of other bands. They would just that would be the after hours kind of party house / place for them to stay, which I feel bad because it was just, it was like a 2-bedroom, one story apartment, and it was all hardwood floors. And I just think you guys brought your own maybe air mattresses, if that, and you just kind of slept on these gross rugs and the hardwood floors in one bathroom.
The generosity of our friends along the way has been a thing that has kept Punchline going even today. But at this example, Double J's generosity and Double J's roommate that let us stay with them for the entire time we were recording, I don't know if we'd have been able to do it without that. I mean, we'd have spent as much on lodging as we would on the recording of the album, probably.
We went to shows and stuff. Showing up to a show with Double J is like showing up, with, Bill Clinton or something like that. And everybody knew him and everyone loved him. And he's just a super cool guy and really helped us.
He was working for Victory Records at the time. He was the graphic designer there, and he did a bunch of Punchline album covers and artwork along the way, including the album cover for Just Say Yes.
Before this, we had just worked with engineers who would help with the production to a certain point, but we didn't do anything like pre-production. We didn't go the full mile like we were now. Sean O'Keefe was producing this album. He wasn't an engineer who was helping out with ideas here and there. This was the real deal.
We were just off the chain with making these really long progressive punk rock songs. And I feel like it's at some point we were like, maybe our songs should be a little shorter. Maybe we should reel it in a little bit.
Sean was really good at, persuading us to make parts more of stunts than parts. For example, taking a part that we might have spent 30 seconds playing in a song and turning it into 3 seconds, and it being this surprise element that pokes out at you, and then you spin right back into the hook of the song.
And he actually helped us realize that every part that you write doesn't have to go into the song.
Sean O'Keefe was super young. I mean, I think he was our age, which was about 23 or 24 at the time. Maybe a little bit older, but I don't even think so. And we were super excited to get to work with him.
Previously, the studios that we worked in were all plush and all super designed and decorated and looked super professional, whereas this one was like an abandoned building that had a really awesome control room and live room and a small lounge that was fine for what it was, but it was definitely like just an empty building. But the best sounds came from it.
There were a few tenants living upstairs, and every once in a while we would run into the custodian that didn't speak English very well, but he hated me, and he was always yelling at me about about cigarette butts and stuff like that.
The studio was a little bit barren or something. Like it felt like we were inhabiting a place that had been abandoned for some time, but it was totally sufficient. And there was a little lounge, and there was a big control room, and then there was a big live room where, you know, the amps would go and you would do the singing and whatnot.
I wish I had known at the time, things like what kind of console was that in there, but it had a great, beautiful console in the control room and a great live room and just enough gear to make a record.
There were definitely no distractions in that place, unless you went to the lounge and watched a VHS tape or something like that, or maybe went across the street and got a good Mexican meal at this little restaurant across the street. But yeah, you pretty much could focus on the music in there, and that's about it, because otherwise it was just a building.
I really loved the guitar tones we got from there. Pretty sure most of my guitar tones were a Mesa dual rec and mixed with a high watt amp, which at the time was totally new concept for me, blending amp tones and especially blending very different sounding amp tones. And the high watt ended up putting this sparkle on the guitar that was, can't really explain it, just a nice energetic sparkle to it.
I could tell from working with Sean that we were maybe more rough around the edges than I had thought. Maybe not everybody in the band. Definitely me. I was feeling that. I was feeling that for sure. But that was good, and that was good pressure to turn up the heat.
You guys definitely were fun, and yeah, easygoing, fun. I remember at one point. This isn't about how I like you guys as a band, but I remember a quote that you said because it stuck with me, like even to this day, and it might not be word for word, but when we were getting drum sounds, we had a snare sound that we like all really liked and I loved, and I think I was surprised. I shocked myself. It was one of those moments where it was like, oh, the snare sounds really good. Sure, I'll take credit for that. But I have no idea how that just happened. And you were like, dude, you love the snare, and you said, I love a snare drum sound that you can sink your teeth into. And I was like, cool. I just did that for him.
So anyone who knows Sean or has heard of him, they probably know that he's a really sick drummer. And I realized very quickly from recording with him, talking to him, and just going over drum parts that I barely knew how to play drums. I learned from Sean in a week of tracking drums more than I had ever known about playing drums for all the years I'd been playing.
This was the first time that I learned what pre-production was, where you go through the songs that you're going to record and kind of dial them in and, address any issues, smooth them out. So Sean would be like, play me this song, and we play the song. You know what? The way that you start the song kind of doesn't make sense with the rest of the song. What if it goes like this? And, little tweaks to kind of smooth things out. And that's what a great producer does, is they really make the songs shine through.
I think it was really cool for us to take songs that we wrote and had recorded demos of, most of them, and take them to someone whose work we really liked and whose opinion we really valued, and experience them through his ears and his mind to see how he could push us to make them better.
The songs for Action we had demoed with my buddy Derek White. He played drums in my high school band called Substandard, and after he got over being mad that I joined Punchline instead of continuing Substandard, he recorded our demos, and he did an amazing job.
When it's over, that you wish that you had waited. If you waited, would it be much different now? Is it real or is it just imagination? You wanna find the truth but don't know how.
Derek did an awesome job of recording demos for us, I believe on a digital 8-track at his house. I think that's what it was. And we also did some demos that were like all out in the studio with Mike Ofka at Innovation Studios, which were definitely releasable. I mean, they weren't produced yet, but they definitely sounded really good.
Congratulations, I guess you're always right. Well, I'm sorry that I never tried. What happened to the world we knew we were? So much better than they.
But I clearly remember the pre-production process with Sean being, we had finished tracking drums for one song, and then the process was then to go back to the lounge and listen to the next song that we wanted to start. He would, get his bearings with it, try to understand it, and make some suggestions. Then we would just go to the live room and jam the song and go over those suggestions and finely tune it and get rid of what was not needed and really highlight the stuff that was, that needed highlight. Just songwriting 101, pre-production 101. Yeah, Sean was like a total professional and hit the ground running with us.
I remember Sean had a notebook, like a legal pad, and to this day, I still use this trick, I use Notepad on my phone now, but we would listen down to the songs, and as we're listening to each part, just write down what would make this part better. And we did that, and it worked awesomely, and I can't believe that we never thought of doing that before.
I think we went to Chicago with 12 or 13 songs and we recorded all of them. I know that we didn't have Battle Scars written at the time of going there, at least to completion. While we were there, we were like, we need one more song, but let's go through the songs.
There was never any doubt about where the song Open Up was going to be on the album. I mean, it was called Open Up.
And we were trying to picture what we want the crowd to do at the beginning of our set. So we thought, how about a stop where everybody just sings together?
Hey, you've got me.
It's a great way to get everyone hyped up and a great way to start the album, and there it is.
There's definitely a lot of energy and emotion and twists and turns for the first song on an album. We really went all out to make this the ultimate album opener.
Open Up was written at McKee's Rocks in the practice space, and it was probably finished being written by the end of that day because it, we were all in agreement about each part that came next and the ideas that were being thrown out.
I'm a bassist and I love bass and I love feeling the kick drum in a recording. And there are some things that you would do on an album around this time that maybe we wouldn't do now, but I'm really glad that we did then.
I remember us saying to Sean, hey man, how about some 808s on this record? And him, expressing, trepidation? Is that the word that I'm looking for? But by the end of it, he was sold on it. For whatever reason, he got pretty into it. And thankfully, they remained tasteful and not overbearing. And when the record finally came out, I distinctly remember getting a call from my buddy Paul Martins, R.I.P. He was just so excited and was talking about these 808 drops that would hit because he had a really nice system in his car. And it was just really cool to hear my friend that I grew up with, being so proud for us.
We had a poster in our practice space that said "Too Young to Die." Maybe that was the name of a tour that we had a poster for, and that's where the line "Too Young to Die" came from in this song, and I love it. Where did Paul draw inspiration from? The words that were in front of his face in this small room where we practiced. I feel like there was this presentation here where Paul was this smooth singer, and then I would come in and kind of be a little more chaotic and whatnot, and we were striking the balance for that. contrast between our two voices here.
There was definitely a really cool contrast between Steve and Paul's voices. And when they sang together, it sounded like they were supposed to sing together. Their voices just matched up so perfectly. And I would come in at my spots. I would pick my spots, I suppose, and be a part of that too. And I think that vocals are something that we got to be known for.
Not Afraid, we wanted to have a song that just went right into the song with a vocal.
Funny enough, on the demo of the song, we couldn't resist having an intro.
Hey, we're the band that has had 6-minute long intros before vocals come in. What if we do the opposite and just have the vocals come in immediately? Go ahead, try it.
Why do I want you? How can you say things? Like what do you want me to be? Who did I fall for?
Not Afraid is just an upbeat song that makes you feel good, and I think that's what a lot of people expect from Punchline.
Not Afraid has always been a song that we can just kind of throw into our set, and I love that it's always been there. It's like this, reliable friend.
So many people have brought up to me, like robot maids in Rocky IV, it makes no sense. And I just think that, I still think about that line to today, because why did he have a robot maid?
She's inside, you choose to hide and try to act like you are fine. But all the while, that's not your style at all. Like robot maids in Rocky IV, makes no sense, but what's for sure, I can choose myself what to regret. Now every second.
I guess I had just watched Rocky IV when we were writing this song, and then I wrote that lyric. I can't believe it made the album, but I guess it is memorable. But one thing I do want to note is that they made a cut of the movie without any of the robot maid parts. So I guess I wasn't the only one thinking that.
We just all thought that it was kind of silly that they had a robot in that movie, so we immortalized it in our song.
The bridge of this song for the rest of my life will make me think of our good buddy, Nick the Night Beast Testa.
For a few years, Nick Testa was on tour with us, and every night would come out on stage with a tambourine, shirtless, not giving a fuck, just dancing with us on stage, and what a great memory.
This was your biggest fear. You're crazy. That what I'm gonna hear. Keep trying. This was your biggest fear.
Hi, I'm Nick Testa. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. I sing in a band called Night Beast, and when I was hanging out with the Punchline guys, that was my nickname, Night Beast.
We were making friends all over the place, and some people just, would really make an impact on you. And I remember something about Nick, we hit it off, and I just called him one day.
We met Nick in Dayton, Ohio. We played there kind of regularly, but we got invited to this house party afterwards, which proved to be one of the craziest house parties of our lives.
If you want to know the story of the first time that Punchline and I partied together at a pink house in Dayton, Ohio, you can ask us in person, but I'm not going to put it on the internet because I got a kid and a family and stuff. But that was wild. And I'm sure if you ever see Punchline and us play it together, they will tell that story because they do every single time.
And someone kicked the door open, and Nick just looks at the camera and says, "I am a golden god."
We just thought that Nick was a really cool and funny guy, and we were really happy that he could just jump in the van and tour around the country with us.
While I was in high school, we had a really nice DIY scene here in Dayton, and they came through a few times, and they were one of the best bands I'd ever seen, and still one of my favorite bands to listen to.
He made music under the name Night Beast, and this was a new project that he had put together, and he was, kind of like, no, call me Night Beast. All right, and we'll call you Night Beast.
I think what I like best about being around Punchline is that they were all kind of weird dudes. Because I'm a weird dude, there's no question. I always felt comfortable. I never felt alienated. And I even felt celebrated for some of the weirder stuff that I would get into.
Nick Testa was the greatest addition to Punchline that was ever that could ever have been.
Something I learned while touring with Punchline is that I'm not the only one who loves TV theme songs.
I very distinctly remember us like really jamming out to the step-by-step theme song, and we were filming Nick, and he holds up 2 fingers and goes, "The second time around.
We'll make it better. Second time around.
I don't think I had an intention of asking him to come on the road with us. I mean, honestly, we didn't know a lot of people who were willing to live the lifestyle that we were at that point. So it was kind of hard or rare to find somebody who was open to it. And he seemed sad or something. So I was like, hey, why don't you come on the road with us? Come to some shows and sell our merch, be a part of the gang.
Just being in the van and being around my buddies was so much fun. We would play pranks on people. And looking back on it, I don't know that it was the nicest thing to do, but we had a toll spoon, and you would put the change for a highway toll in the spoon and hand the spoon to the toll booth operator instead of giving them the money with your hand, which probably pissed off the toll booth operator.
He toured with us for the better part of 2 years. I want to say he was such a part of Punchline in those times.
Choosing a single from an album had never been something that Punchline was faced with. Before this, it was countless shows and the reaction from the audience at those shows that informed the band as to what songs people liked most. Deciding which song to really push from the album was not easy. Chris Fafalius recalls.
At this time, and I don't know if this is still as big of a deal, but at the time that we were recording Action, whatever song you chose to make track number 3 on the album was a big deal. That was going to be the single.
We had people in our orbit who wanted to play us on the radio because they liked what we had going on. And I think they had a bit of a challenge finding a clear song to pick from this album. But that song was The World.
This is Trevor, longtime friend and fan of Punchline and the current guitarist and backup singer of Punchline. And I remember back to the winter of 2004 after Action had come out and everything was just blowing up around the guys. And I remember so distinctly being on the south side of Pittsburgh. I was in my junior year of college at Duquesne University, and I would go over to the south side on the weekends, go hang with friends. And I remember being over on the south side and this car cruising down the street blasting The World through the radio, and I just smiled ear to ear hearing Steve just this. It was such a cool moment, and it was just so telling of their impact, especially on the Pittsburgh music scene specifically, but just where they were headed. And it was so rad.
Congratulations, I guess you're always right. Well, I'm sorry that I ever tried. What happened to the world we knew? We were so much better than they.
I know that this might not be the biggest deal to everybody, but The World was played pretty frequently on the local alternative station here in Pittsburgh, and a few others actually, but it was crazy. It was like validation, really. If you would get in the car and your friends were there, or your parents or somebody, and you turned on the radio and there was your song. In fact, I remember one of the greatest days I ever had was I just had a new girlfriend, and we went skiing for the day, and it was a great time, and we got in the car, and as soon as we got in the car, my song was on. I just remember thinking, wow, life is amazing.
Vivid memory of stopping for gas in Penn Hills at Frankstown in Rodi at an old Exxon. I walked in to, buy gas, and The World was playing on the radio behind this girl that was at the cash register, and I stood there kind of like confused at first, like why is our song playing? But it all came to me very quickly, and I looked up at her and I was like, hey, this is my band. Like that's me singing right there. And I guess I expected her to like be like, wow, can I have your autograph or something? She just didn't give a shit.
Hi, I'm Jim Legrando. You may know me as the narrating voice of A Band Called Punchline, but I'm also a longtime fan, friend, and current manager of the band. At the time the World Radio single came out, I was the music director for WGMR, Revolution 101, in State College, Pennsylvania, and I had just seen Punchline blow the doors off a show at Pollock Commons at Penn State University a few months prior, and then this single comes across my desk. I remember it vividly because it was a printed white sticker label affixed to a CDR, because the sticker was so sheer I could see the CD manufacturer's logo shining right through it. I think I still have this promo single that I was sent that very week. I added the single immediately, and I hope my airplay helped it reach the alternative specialty chart.
On Heart Transplant, I will say that we knew when we were writing this song that it was something special, and we weren't surprised when this song became a bigger song of ours.
Heart Transplant is just one of my all-time favorite songs to play.
It starts with a finger-picked clean part on the guitar that in the middle of a show, in the middle of a set with all this adrenaline and you're sweating and stuff, that's a hard thing to nail at the start of a song, and everybody's hanging on every word of the guitar at that point.
If you think that I don't notice, you're not looking me in the eye, and you're blind, and I don't have the time to sit here and wonder just what's under your skin tonight. And I know that there's a problem, but I don't.
If I could hop in my time machine and go back and talk to 2004 Punchline, I'd say, why don't you guys push this song? Why don't you guys like make a music video for this song? It makes no sense that we didn't try harder with this song because people already liked it. People liked it from downloading it as MP3 and getting it on samplers, let alone when the album came out. I don't know what we were thinking.
I think it's a badass song, and I'm glad that I'm part of it.
Even a heart transplant wouldn't show you how I feel, would it, baby? You're tearing up my past now. Yeah, it wouldn't show you how I feel, would it now?
Time in a Picture is a special one. That opening arpeggio was something that I could play and I thought sounded kind of impressive, but I, was still just an average guitar player. And so I like that. I hope I had you all fooled.
I absolutely love the beginning of this song. I could live in that piece of music, the dun 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 dun. Especially when we kick in, I hit the bass chord, and then we go into the harmonies with Paul's melody over top of it. The go go. That part gave me chills when we recorded it, and it's still one of my favorite parts of a Punchline song. I love it.
I can still remember finishing a take and Sean clicking in on the talkback and going, all right, you just finished the hardest song. Let's go celebrate. Or something along those lines. But either way, when we were done with it, we were so happy because both he and I wanted to pull our hair out. Me because I kept messing up, and him because I kept messing up.
The hand I drew had more cards in it that should have been dealt. But there's a card completing everything that I have not yet held. I tie the lights and lights are hot with my broken smile.
I think one thing that we were all really proud of on this album is between the song Time in a Picture and the next song, Coldest of Calendars, there is a transition that links the two songs together that not only changes key, but also changes time signature and tempo. So it wasn't an easy thing to do. And I got to give Steve a lot of credit, not only for coming up with the guitar parts and things that are going on here, but also I believe he was the one that really pushed us like, no, we got to do this, even though it was kind of an elaborate and hard thing to do.
Yeah, and all the credit to Sean O'Keefe for making it work, because I still to this day, no one has ever come up to me and asked how we did it, but I think that they should, is what I'm saying.
Pictures, and I'll make it, and I'll make it.
Coldest of Calendars was a song that was written in one sitting, all the words right there, very easy and effortless, and it was nice to put a ballad there at track 6.
Being cold and coldness in general has always been a recurring theme in Punchline songs, and it sure wasn't going to miss the Action album.
We were still obsessed with the Heaven and Breakfast gang and music, and we asked Justin Oliver to sing the bridge of this song, which he wrote and sang.
If I'm remembering correctly, I think he was there when we wrote this song, because I distinctly remember us doing a playback on the drum beat at the beginning and him saying, "Yo, that's how you need to start this song."
I've seen nights without sleep, days without daylight. These memories I keep won't keep me warm at night. The coldest part is the heart that we share is breaking apart, and you're not even here. I say things will get better, still freezing out, blanket my discontent till I see you again. I'm cold inside.
Getting There Is Getting By was an anthem of ours that felt like the sonic representation of our struggles out on the road. You know, touring was hard. I was always amazed every time we got home. Wow, we're still alive. That's incredible in itself.
We were ready to record Getting There Is Getting By, and I remember Sean telling me, like, hey, we need to come up with a drum part for the beginning. And I was literally just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and played one thing, and he went, yeah, let's use that.
I'm gonna get there.
I don't know many songs where there's a bass melody like as a riff that a guitar would play, and you know, is a hook in and of itself, and it's just unique and stands apart from the rest for me.
Getting There Is Getting By was a set regular for us for years and years, and now I feel like I haven't played it in like a decade, but I would like to.
Why Is He Right? I know Paul's going to say that he hates Why Is He Right?
Why Is He Right? I don't know. Not sure about that one. Never really sat well with me. Just seemed like something we would have thrown away at a younger age even.
It was kind of more like Major Motion Picture or an older sound.
The presentation of it was just like something I thought we were getting away from.
I think it's a totally okay song. Is it the best? No, but it's by no means a bad song. I like playing it.
If you're not too busy tonight, could you come visit me at my closed eyes? Please don't leave before the once realized this could be a big mistake. If I haven't already
Battle Scars we wrote in the studio. I think we must have needed another song, or maybe we thought it would be cool to write a song while we were out there in Chicago in the studio.
While recording Action, I think that the creative juices were just flowing.
I think we thought it would be cool to kind of work from scratch off of just an idea for a song with Sean, whereas most of the other songs in the album were complete songs. Yeah, they changed along the way, but this one came together in the studio, and it ended up being one of the most popular songs on the album and one of my favorites on the album.
As Sharp as a Flat. Oh man, that song rips.
We definitely allowed ourselves the opportunity to have a song about being in a band, even though that was something we tried not to do all that much anyway. But we were allowing ourselves this on this one. Also, something about this song that I really like is the guitar part.
Since this was a song about being in a band, we wanted to make sure that this was a real band's band type of song. We wanted it to be really musically interesting. And when it was all said and done, I think from that side of things, from the side of trying to write, I don't know, like an impressive song or something, that this was the song that we were the most proud of once it was all said and done.
You know, it's funny. We recorded Action like 8 million years ago, it seems like at this point. But every single time, if I happen to be listening to it, and especially As Sharp as a Flat, the cello part always surprises me. And I always go, oh yeah, I forgot that part was there.
We had this cello player who played with the Smashing Pumpkins play on a couple songs. He played on As Sharp as a Flat and Coldest of Calendars? Is that right?
Sean hooked up the Eric Remschneider connection, who had famously played on the Smashing Pumpkins Siamese Dream album, and he played on the bridge of this song, and it's just one of the highlights of the album, I think.
A Beautiful Green is a pretty big departure from what we normally do. And I remember at the practice space in McKees Rocks, as always, Chris and I came up with that dun 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 dun, and we were just kind of playing that over and over again. And we liked it. And then Steve and Paul just started like freestyling to it and coming up with all these different parts to put over it and all these little guitar fun little runs to do.
I'm pretty sure the original inspiration for that song was Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes, just a song with a lot of loops, but so catchy and you can't get it out of your head. And Sean helped take that song to another level. It was unlike any other Punchline song up to that point.
This is the way you are. Don't change yourself for me. This is the way you are. Don't change yourself for me. This is the way you are. Don't change yourself for me.
That was more like loop based, and especially in those days that was harder to make. And I know I was super influenced by the Postal Service, so my guess is that we were like, let's do like a Postal Service-y type thing. And I remember having a lot of fun experimenting on that song.
Just Getting Started we wrote to be the last song on the album. This song has a throwback to the Rewind EP when Paul says, fast forward because we haven't done that one yet. Just let me know so I have time to smoke a cigarette.
Fast forward 'cause we haven't done that one yet. Just let me know so I have time to smoke a cigarette when it's time to leave.
This song was like the embodiment of everything that we were at the time and everything that I think we still strive to be. I mean, it was positive. It was a nothing's gonna stop us sort of song. And I don't know, it really was a great album closer because it kind of left it open-ended. Like, we're just getting started with what we're doing here.
I have a vivid memory of Steve saying to me, man, I thought of a cool chorus the other night or last night or something like that, and you're really gonna like it. And he was like Babe Ruth. He called his shot, you know, and because he was right, I really liked it.
The end of this song has this triumphant feel that I think is very hopeful, and I feel is a little bit of a signature sound of Punchline.
The end of the song is definitely a culmination of like all of our favorite. It seems like all of our favorite parts of the record.
There are so many drum fills, and I remember Sean just saying, play everything that you can think of.
Recording this album reminds me of eating a lot of mac and cheese and watching the Beatles anthology on VHS, which we had brought the whole box set.
I just remember being around a lot of friends in Chicago feeling like a home away from home.
August Premiere, Much the Same, Split Habit, Alistair, loads of bands from Chicago.
So we had a ton of visitors, and it was like really cool to show off this album that we were really, proud of to a lot of these people.
I mean, I remember first hearing a lot of the songs from Action. I remember going into the studio and hearing some of the songs and just really blown away.
And to be honest, I still actually think the Punchline record sounds great. And I know that's totally biased and egotistical to say that, but all things considered, when it comes on, it feels great to me. It sounds big and full and immediate, and sure, it was done 20 years ago, and but by those standards, man, it feels awesome.
Hey, this is Corey. I am the current drummer of Punchline and have been for the past 11 years, I think. But man, Action, what a record. I'll never forget when it came out. I was, I believe, a sophomore in high school, and I went to Spain with my soccer team, and yeah, it had just come out, and that was what I listened to nonstop. Don't think I listened to anything else on the flight to Barcelona, and just blew my mind. The production, the songs, it was definitely an oh shit moment for me that a band from Pittsburgh can really do it.
It was a really exciting time for our little piece of the music world, and with this album, we felt like, okay, we put our best foot forward. This could be our ticket to the next level.
Now armed with an album that was full of heart and stood up sonically to everything else in the genre, Punchline was ready to take the next step. But what was the next step? Writing, recording, and touring was all the band knew, and a lot of the business aspects of the music industry were still a complete mystery. Steve Sabosley remembers.
I think we're feeling some pressure. We didn't really know what to do on a record label, or what the role of the band was, or how communication should work. What do they do? What are we supposed to do? Are we doing the right thing? And our mentality was just to keep touring, because that seemed to work for us. And at this point, that was kind of just what we knew to do.
I think the only approach we knew or that made sense to us was to do a tour and then try to get a bigger tour and then try to get a bigger tour and just work your way up the ladder until you're the headlining band.
Action came out on February 24th, 2004, and the release show was at Club Laga on February 28th, 2004.
The Action CD release show was amazing. Funny part is that I think there were way too many people in there. Like, it was beyond sold out.
This is Trevor again, and I was at the Action release show at Club Laga in February 2004, and man, it was electric. They were just so tight, they were so confident, and they had the whole crowd in the palm of their hands, and it just felt like a huge party. But everyone was just so inspired and like proud of how amazing these guys were and what they were doing. And I'm just so glad I was there. It was such an epic moment.
You could say we were on top of the world at this point. I definitely feel like this was a peak.
Old friends, new friends, people you don't know singing your song and being able to sell out that venue. I mean, we had all been going to shows at Laga for years, grew up going to this place, seeing our favorite bands, and we were experiencing it from the other side, and it was absolutely crazy.
There's no doubt with how well the Action release show went that we were feeling momentum and we were feeling like we were really on the precipice of something, but we paid our dues to get to that point. So if my memory serves me correctly here, we were obviously psyched about how great that release show was. I'm sure we partied a little bit, but it was back to business shortly after because we wanted every show in every city to be like that one.
I remember sitting in the van with Chris and listening to the Rewind EP and thinking, wow, this is so much better than anything I can ever do, and so much better than even their last album that I loved. And then they made Action, which was just like, to me, a perfect encapsulation of what that era of that type of music was. It was everything I wanted it to be, and it still had their flair of humor and whimsy, and it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill emo pop punk album. Yeah, I said whimsy.
There was a show in this era that we played with the starting line at St. Vincent College, and I'm not so sure what the deal was, but it's not that I had low expectations for the show. I just didn't realize how big of a show that was going to be, or that we were going to make maybe more fans in that one show than we ever did at any other show. It's possible.
Oh, yeah, I remember that show.
Chris did this crazy thing where he climbed up the light scaffolding during our last song.
It makes me kind of cringe to talk about this, but I guess I was trying to be the crazy guy in the band climbing the rope ladder or whatever it was on the huge, enormous light scaffolding thing. And I remember after we finished our set, the people working the show came up to me flipping out that I could have pulled the whole thing down and killed people and all this stuff. And that was the last time I ever tried to be too crazy of a bass player or put other people's lives at risk. But yeah, not my proudest moment. But people liked us at that show.
I think Action maybe sold 1,000 copies in its first week, or 600 copies. Anybody else remember that?
I'm pretty sure we sold closer to 2,000. For whatever reason, I have 1,800 in my head as the number of Action records sold in the first week.
I don't know what the number was. Maybe we could go back and sound scan and see. I doubt that exists for us to be able to look that up. Regardless, it was good. I'm pretty sure I remember somebody from Fueled by Ramen emailing us and saying that it was like the best first week that an album had on FBR up to that point. Obviously, they probably had albums later that sold 500,000 in the first week or whatever. But at that point, whatever number it was really good.
We were offered a tour in Japan, to go to Japan for a week to do a tour with Fall Out Boy.
I remember both bands meeting up at, I believe it was the O'Hare Airport in Chicago that we flew out of. And I remember being excited, but also kind of anxious about what would be the longest flight of my life. and just not knowing what to expect when we got there?
Were there going to be people there? Because it was very much like, yeah, you're going to go toward Japan and play a bunch of shows in Tokyo. We were like, are there going to be people there? Do they know us there? Like, yeah. But it didn't feel like a very confirmed yes. So there was much anticipation and guessing and hoping that this thing would go over well.
When we finally got to Tokyo after a really long trip, I remember walking up some steps into like the heart of Tokyo, just people everywhere, and it was really overwhelming. And a couple girls came up to us, and the one girl had a folded up sign, and she unfolded it, and it said, "Welcome Punchline." And I was like, whoa, this is incredible. And I started to get the inkling that this was going to be really, really cool.
We played, the first show there was in a super small club, and it was supposed to be a secret show, but we went out and played, and the crowd knew our songs. And I mean, people were packed. It was a very small club, but it was sold out and packed, and people were going crazy and singing along to our songs. And we just had no idea that it was going to be that way.
Up until the very first show, we still had no idea what to expect. But we found out, at that show that we had fans there, like really big fans that were, ecstatic to see us and singing the words and full of energy. To be honest, it was the coolest thing in the world to travel to the other side of the world and have kids be just so excited that you're there playing in front of them. It was surreal.
That first show in Japan was the most unbelievable surprise of my life, I think. We didn't know how it was going to go, and as soon as we were playing that part and open up, like we were talking about before, and we stopped and everyone started singing, man, that was just so awesome.
Actual audio from Punchline's first ever show in Japan.
I still, to this day, sometimes put on the video on YouTube of that first tour just to watch that part and go, ha, that's awesome.
The next show was at this club called Club Quattro in Shibuya City. And it's one of my favorite clubs that we've ever played, and we've gotten to play there a few times in total.
I can't stress enough how well we were treated by everyone over there. Moto and Mie from Big Mouth, our translator Tomo, Ken, who's a photographer who we became friends with over there, who taught me some Japanese that I tried to use on stage. I think people thought that was pretty funny. I was trying.
Packed, maybe not sold out, but very packed and close to it. And people sang along to people knew the words to every song, every one of our songs. And it was the best crowd I ever played in front of over there, because people are so excited, singing along. The crowds will just start chanting "Hey" to your song, like to the beat. Hey, 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 on their own. They don't even need to be told what to do. And then in between songs, it's like the polar opposite, where everybody's so quiet and attentive.
While we were over there, us and Fall Out Boy were kind of joking around about how big the shows were and how the fandom, because obviously they will be going to experience that tenfold probably. But at that time, none of us, we hadn't really experienced actual fandom before. And so we thought it would be hilarious if we were 1989 Def Leppard, and at the end of the show, both bands would line up. I don't know why I said Def Leppard did this. I'm assuming they did. But anyway, we would line up, join hands, put all of our hands up in the air, and take a big bow. And we thought it was the funniest thing in the world, but they actually liked it when we did it too.
We learned some Japanese to speak, be able to speak to people and to say stuff on stage. Chris would, have a little list and memorize some phrases and just, try to make it fun. And people definitely picked up that we were trying, and they liked it, were receptive to it.
I remember one of the things I learned to say on stage was, "I just ate a cheese sandwich backstage." It was something with sandoichi in it. And I think I even turned it into a song and got the crowd to sing along to it. And that really went over well.
The only thing that sucked for me about going to Japan was that time, for sure, and we went years later. But both times I got sick, and I blame it on the plane. But so it sucked. That was the only thing that sucked for me, was the being there for a week and playing amazing shows, but like my voice teetering on the edge of like losing it, you know.
Us and the Fall Out Boy guys had a lot of fun over there, just exploring the city. I remember going to those karaoke booths where you have your own booth. I remember drinking way too much sake and performing that Eminem, I think my dad's gone crazy, with Andy from Fall Out Boy, and just like getting really out of control on some nights. But man, oh man, was that fun.
I want to say by this point, Fall Out Boy was getting pretty big. So maybe the tour was booked for a few months and it made sense that we were co-headlining or we were headlining. But I remember being there and just thinking like, okay, Fall Out Boy's on a different level than us now at this point. And even though we're playing together on the same bill here in this co-headlining fashion, like maybe it makes sense here in Japan, but back home, like, you know, they're a peg up for sure.
Look, I'd never had sake before, and it came in a little bowl, and it was like warm and just went down real easy. And I think I got drunker than I ever did my entire life. And this whole time, Pete is filming me on his video camera, including the part of the night, I think at the karaoke place, where I was throwing up in the bathroom and Pete was filming me like from between, like an upward angle from between my legs. It was really, really gross. I mean, there was all kind of crazy stuff he filmed, but it was months later. He had some like clothing brand that they were putting out a DVD, and it was like basically like a Fall Out Boy, them doing wacky stuff. I remember at one point Pete jumped off a roof with an umbrella or something, but he asked, hey, can we use this footage on here? And I agreed to it. It's some of the worst footage you'll ever see of me, but I agreed to it. And I remember it was years and years later after they'd really blown up, and my buddy Tony Hartman texted me and said, hey man, they're showing that. It was like a show with like 20,000 people or something in Cleveland, and they were showing it between bands. He's like, you're up on this giant screen in front of 20,000 people right now puking. And I was like, wow.
Fall Out Boy had a plan, and they had this really special energy to them, like the determination and wow factor just on high. Like talk about magic. I mean, they ripped through every city that we played, almost to a point where we were people's way like into Fall Out Boy. So I would start getting a lot of questions about Fall Out Boy and like, wow, they're getting really big, aren't they? Like, what about you guys?
It's obviously nothing against them, but Fall Out Boy becoming a big band and people nonstop talking to us about them really became the bane of our existence. As if we didn't have enough pressure on ourselves, now it's like we have this comparison to this band that did well, that was close to us, and that was a hard thing to deal with.
They would take us out to eat every night in Japan, and we would have these huge tables, and we would bring friends, and they would just buy everybody dinner. It was crazy how much this label seemed to be spending on us. Like, I never got the full LA experience and like record labels buying you dinner so much. I feel like that time in the music industry was a little bit before us, and some kind of like glory selling loads of CDs days, because at this point people were burning CDs, music was being stolen, and you know, going more towards the iPod. People were still buying CDs, but it was on a decline, but it wasn't dead yet.
The day of our Tower Records in-store is probably one of my funniest memories of being in a band, and my only experience really of like something like this ever happening to me. But so anyway, the Tower Records wasn't far from our hotel. So earlier in the day, since when you're in Japan, you're just basically always awake for like the first week or so. I was up, so I'm like, I'm gonna go check out where we're playing. So I go into the Tower Records, and there's like little cardboard cutouts for Big Mouth Records, and it had us, an actual picture of us like cut out above the CDs. And it was absolutely insane to be halfway across the world, or the full way across the world, whatever you want to say, and to see a cardboard cutout of yourself. And that was insane. But then this is the really crazy part. At a certain point, the store manager comes up to me and he asks if he can escort me out of the back of the store because I'm causing too much of a disturbance. And I got escorted down through the back of the store out into the alley, and then I just kind of had to go back to the hotel, I guess, because I wasn't allowed to be there anymore. Too famous, you know.
We did a show at this Tower Records, which was called an in-store when you play in a record store. And they had this nice room with a stage. And it was just like a little venue at this Tower Records. We played acoustic, and Fall Out Boy played acoustic. And I remember their drummer, Andy, saying that he needed to get acoustified by putting his hair back in a ponytail and playing kind of like real soft, like Dave Grohl on Nirvana Unplugged. I thought that was funny, and I remember it.
That first acoustic in-store in Japan has become sort of sparkly and magical in memory for me, especially since we had videos of it that are on YouTube, and it just keeps that moment alive and fresh in my mind. And I hope I realized how cool and special that was at the moment.
Patrick Stump had been coming out to sing Heart Transplant with us towards the end of the song. And when we were in Japan together, it had been a moment before we'd played together. And I think he forgot where the part was or thought it was happening sooner than it was. And he comes out and the part was, minutes away from happening. And he just kind of stood there. He didn't know what to do. It was really cool to hear him sing our song and sing it in a way where I'm like, wow, now that guy, I know I'm supposed to be a singer, but that dude can sing.
We went back to Japan several times after this, but this first trip, I don't think anything could ever compare because we didn't know what we were getting into, and I'll never forget it.
At this time, like just about every touring band ever, Punchline was dependent on merch and CD sales at shows to keep gas in the tank, food in their stomachs, and the occasional hotel room to sleep in. Tour after tour would find the band coming home having made a modest profit, only to have to reinvest in everything from van issues to ordering more t-shirts. This left little take-home pay for what was more than a full-time job, which isn't easy when you're a full-grown adult. Steve Sabosley recalls.
We always put all of the money that we made besides the per diem just back into the band. And I almost want to say that the thought of like us paying ourselves anything from the music was like against principle or something. We were very much like to pay ourselves from the band was viewed as like selling out or something.
Once a year around Christmas time, we would actually pay ourselves with money from the band. And I remember thinking it was always so much money. Now when I look back on it, we probably gave ourselves like a couple of $100 here and there.
I remember when we'd be home from tour, taking whatever random job to make whatever money I could, or working at my dad's scrapyard when I came home, just to do whatever we could to get by so that I could be back on the road and getting like $8 a day per diem again.
We did this long drive to Atlanta. We played this music conference. It was at the Masquerade in Atlanta. It sucked. It wasn't worth our time, I guess. But when we came out of the club after we played, we learned that somebody had broken into our van.
I was lucky because I had only had CDs stolen from me. A lot of CDs, but these other guys like got their bags stolen with all their shit and everything. But I think I fared pretty lucky on that one.
I was really into filming everything we were doing at that time. I had a Hi8 video camera, and still breaks my heart today. I like to think these tapes are out there somewhere. They're definitely not. Whoever stole the video camera instantly threw away the tapes, I'm sure. But we had like footage of our first tour with Less Than Jake and all this exciting stuff that was going on at the time, and the tapes are all gone.
And just before learning this news, I saw Tom Morello standing there hanging out outside of the Masquerade. So it was like, whoa, Tom Morello. And it's always like, hey, I think your van got broken into. What? Somebody came up to us and said, hey, I know who did it. What? Who? It was that red-headed, freckle-faced freak who lives in the cave, sells the flowers.
It was that goddamn redhead with them goddamn wildflowers.
then the cops come and they're taking a statement. Guy's taking down all my information. And I say, for what it's worth, somebody did give us a tip about who did it. Cop looks at me, raises an eyebrow. He said it was a redheaded, freckle-faced freak who lives in a cave and sells the flowers. And he just kind of shakes his head and looks back down, continues to write.
So that was a real nice thing to happen before we had to do like a, 15-hour drive or something with our window smashed.
Now I remember about the drive. It was crazy because we had to go from Buffalo to Atlanta and then up to Milwaukee to start a couple shows on Warped Tour.
Warped Tour in a van is a special kind of hell. And I kind of hate in retrospect that we did it that way, for that trip, because we never did it again.
Playing on Warped Tour in a van is crazy because Warped Tour, you had to check in at, let's say, 7 a.m., find out when you were playing, which might be at 4 p.m., and then you had to load out after. And then you had to drive yourself. We didn't have a driver. So Warped Tour was literally a 24-hour long day. You were never not, there wasn't much rest, and it was tough.
Every summer after that, whenever we could have done something on the Warped Tour or something like that, we always just chose to go on tour with another band like Real Big Fish or Bowling for Soup and let's just play the air-conditioned House of Blues. That sounds a lot better.
We did a tour with Fall Out Boy. Maybe it was the Take This to Your Grave tour, but this tour felt like them paying us back for having taken them on tour. And we were, I don't know if we were the opening band. I think we were the second band. It was Don't Look Down, us, and Berlin, and Fall Out Boy.
I don't know. I've always just kind of been the way I am and done the things that I've done and never really thought twice about it. But on this tour, none of the drummers wore shirts. I had to drum on this tour shirtless because I was the only one who wore a shirt. It was awful.
And it was crazy. That was one of the best tours that we ever did. We were playing clubs that were all probably held about 1,000 people, and every night it was packed, and Fall Out Boy Frenzy was on high.
There are certain moments in a band's career that test how much they can bend without breaking and how much adversity they can face without giving up.
That fall, we did a tour with Mest, Bayside, and Hawthorne Heights. The first show of the tour was in Milwaukee, so I think that we got a head start and we started driving the day before, and we were somewhere, we stayed at a hotel maybe around Toledo or something like that, and the next morning, I got a call from Chris. Chris was always the first one up, and he would write letters, and then he would go take the van and go find a mailbox. I got a call from him, and Chris was upset. Something was wrong.
Look, around this time, we were getting a lot of orders for merch and stuff, and I shipped a lot of stuff out. So I had a lot of people that were fans of our band's addresses. So I thought it was really cool, and I'd been doing this probably for a year. I've been doing it for a long time. I would send postcards and handwritten letters to people that liked our band and be like, hey, today we're in Chicago. Hope you're having a great day or whatever. One, because I wanted to show appreciation. And two, my thought about that was damn, if a band I liked took the time and sent me a letter or a postcard out of nowhere just to say hi from the road, I would be a lifelong fan of that band. So, it was a little bit to show appreciation, a little bit to try to make some lifelong fans. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but every day I was always the first one up in the morning, and I would take the van and find a post office to mail the letters. And this time, I remember I pulled the van and trailer out. I even remember the song I was listening to. It was the new Hot Rod Circuit album that was out at the time. It was the first song on the album, I think it's called Inhabit, where Max Bemis from Say Anything sings the bridge. And I think it was that part where this happened. But I realized I was past the post office and I needed to turn around. So I kind of pulled off, and I was kind of doing a 180 on a side road. And the next thing I remember was two ladies knocking on the window and me looking up, and I saw one of those trucks that they use with the big thing, the big arm that fixes power lines over in a ditch. And I looked in the rear view mirror and I saw a trailer on its side, and I was like, oh my God, it was insanely scary. That whatever, I don't know how many minutes that was that I was passed out.
We were all sleeping at the time, and I woke up to Steve telling me that Chris just called him and something was going on with the trailer, is what he told Steve. And so we all walked up the road to see what had happened. I figured he jackknifed it or something like that happened.
I don't think it flipped, but it was on its side.
And it was only a couple hundred yards from the hotel. But yeah, and we were there for days until our buddy Matt Fuchs came with his van. Then we finished the tour out in his conversion van. But yeah, I just remember being like kind of stranded there for a couple days, and bikes being a bunch of motorcycles being around, because I think it was bike week of some sort at this city, Sturgis.
And that van got us everywhere, and we had this whole schedule, and it's just kind of like, what do you do? What do we do? And it was very stressful, and things were really brewing. Tensions were brewing in the band. And I remember sitting on this picnic table and us going over, like, we can do A, or we can do B, or we can do C.
Man, I felt horrible about that. Even recounting this story, I feel terrible about it. But it's times like these where you see how much everyone around you cares. I mean, our friends Matt and I think Tony came out for part of that tour too. Just people really came out to help us out. The other bands on the tour helped us out. Our fans helped us out. We made a t-shirt like commemorating the wreck, and like we sold a lot of them, which helped out with the finances of like getting things fixed. And man, oh man, that was so stupid. I mean, it was an accident, but man, it was so stupid. I never wrote another letter after that.
We rented a minivan and we drove to the show in Milwaukee, and we made the show. I think we had limited equipment, and Bayside and Hawthorne Heights not only let us borrow their equipment, but they also let half of us ride with one and half ride with the other, which is so sweet. You don't even know how sweet that is.
This first night, when everyone had to ride, we split up. So half of us rode with Hawthorne Heights, half of us rode with Bayside, because those guys were our buds and they were awesome enough to let us do that. I learned, make friends with the guys who have a tour bus. That's even better. So I rode with Mest.
Fall Out Boy would have us play these hall shows with them in Arlington Heights, around where they were from. And at one of these shows, they introduced us to the New Kids on the Block, this band that was called The Academy, that later added an "is" to their name. Fast forward a few months, and The Academy we're on Fueled by Ramen, and we were going to do some shows with them and Less Than Jake.
I probably said this in past episodes, but I'm sure glad that the other guys have a better memory than me, because all the tours we did, and there were a lot of them at this time, they all get jumbled together. I have no sense of which one came before which one, but the things that do stick out in my mind were like the really big ones, and the ones that we were really excited to do, like Less Than Jake tours.
Touring with Less Than Jake and being a part of Fueled by Ramen, which Vinny from Less Than Jake was the co-founder, it was a really big deal for us. And I want to stress that, because prior to being on the label, Less Than Jake was the band that I personally had paid to go see more than any other band. I'd seen Less Than Jake 17 times that I had gone to their shows. So it was like pretty crazy that we were playing shows with them, and this was one of the bands that was going to be the ones to take us under their wing in the scope of our career.
To say that I was intimidated would be the biggest understatement. Like, when I think about how nervous I was to play with Less Than Jake, it was absolutely insane. Like, I felt like I couldn't even hold the sticks in my hands. I mean, quickly got over that when they took away all my drums and covered me in toilet paper.
I'll always remember being outside of a show in Houston with Chris DeMakes from Less Than Jake and him giving me this vocal warm-up trick that was to do Z's, like zzz, zzz. I feel like that was the first vocal warm-up I ever learned.
A booking agent is a pretty important piece of the puzzle if you're trying to maintain momentum and keep things going for your band.
We had a booking agent. His name was Chris Ring. He was a promoter in Buffalo that we turned into our agent. I don't think he was booking anybody else, but he was there when we were catching some heat, and he stepped in to be our booking agent.
I remember Chris Ring would always just say, "Got to do it for the kids. Got to do it for the kids, man." And everything he did, he was doing for the kids. And by the kids, he didn't just mean like the children. He was talking about everyone who came out to shows. Everyone who came out to shows were the kids, and you did everything for the kids.
It is your friend Chris Ring from Buffalo, New York. The world that, we all kind of grew up in, it was definitely very like friend focused. It was kind of easy to network. Bands always took their friends' bands out on tour.
He wanted things to be fun, and he wanted to kind of retain that spirit of like you're doing fun things together with a severe element of entrepreneurship, and always wanted to take risks, but just keep it fun and keep it in that kind of like punk mentality here. Let's not get stale. Like, let's not do business. Let's do each other favors and whatnot.
I'll never forget the one day, we were booking your headline show, I think in Pittsburgh, off the Action tour. I had this hanging up in my office for a long time. Brian Drusky sent over a $10,000 offer for you guys to headline, maybe Club Lago or Laga. I can't remember the name of the club at the time, but $10,000 offer was a shitload of money, especially for a pop punk band back in the day, just kind of starting out or getting their first break. So, I think we were all excited to do that show. But then we got the bad news that, for us to take the Mest tour, they would have to headline the Pittsburgh show. And in theory, they would get all the money. And you guys had to take a back seat. I think maybe got $250, maybe $500 for that night, maybe a bonus. It's all vague, but it was cool to kind of at least receive that offer. That was kind of something that kept my momentum going, knowing that there was definitely some like real shit kind of happening behind it.
I already alluded to this, but I think we were just in the mentality that you keep touring. That's all you need to do. Just keep touring. You don't need to do all this other stuff. All this other stuff's going to get done. And now I know that that's such a dumb way to think. The only way things are going to get done is if you do them yourself. I believe that 1,000% now. And I think back in this era, I kind of think we assumed that certain things were being done on our behalf.
I remember feeling this frustration and having these long talks with Fred, our manager, where I felt like I was having to explain to him what it was that we wanted. I mean, not that he should have known on his own what we wanted, but I was starting to become more aware of like, oh, there's a whole way to approach this music and music industry thing, and are we doing that right? And I think whereas before had kind of just let people whose hands we were in do their thing, I was, it just didn't feel right to not speak up and intervene. So we would always talk and whatnot, but it was becoming challenging, or like he didn't know what to do with us to help us get to the next level.
Fred was definitely a part of the team. He gave us a home away from home when we were in Philadelphia. He believed in us. He did all he could for us, but the truth was that he just came from a different world than we did when it came to music. He was from the major label radio world, and we were from the guys in a van playing at VFWs and fire halls on an independent record label world. And sometimes the way you go about things in those worlds are vastly different.
I think at this point, Fall Out Boy was really taking off, and we were starting to feel like we're going to get left behind, or just like, hey, we want to do what they're doing. How do we find opportunities, or just like do what we can to stay here where we're at and just keep growing.
That band's rise, which we witnessed in real time, just put so much more pressure on us, because before, the bands that we thought were big were nowhere near as big as they were about to be. So just the whole scope of everything changed, and all of a sudden we felt 10 times the pressure than we did before.
And then at some point, Chris Ring calls me and says, "Hey, hear me out, but what does Fred, your manager, do?" And I said, "Well, he's our manager." "Well, yeah, but what is he doing for you guys?" "Well, he got us on the radio." Yeah, that's cool. That was a while ago. Now at this point, what's he doing now?" And this kind of, brought it to the surface that maybe we weren't, moving at the speed that we wanted to, or that it just didn't feel like a right fit, that Fred was finding us the right opportunities that we had wanted. But, I can't even say that we knew what we wanted, but it just wasn't jiving at that point.
I kind of felt like I was out on an island. And what I mean by that is a lot of other booking agents that I worked with or talked to, would tell me that, that they had big time managers, and the big time managers were able to help curate tours, get placements on Fuse, or, get your songs placed into movies and soundtracks and commercials. And, the managers were really the ones that were pulling a lot of the strings behind the scenes to help the bands get the tours. And at the time when I was working with you guys and we had Fred on the team, I kind of felt like, a lot of it was rested on my relationships. Like I said, Fred was more specialized in the radio world. So, he was getting you guys some radio play, getting you on a couple of radio shows here and there as openers, but nothing really translated into, national tours, endorsements, stick endorsements, string endorsements, little things that helped kind of lower the band's overhead. Maybe you guys got free guitars or free drum heads and things like that would just kind of make your lives a little bit easier. And I kind of saw myself not doing it, but at least asking those questions of to like, hey, what's going on here? Is Fred helping out with this? Is Fred helping out with that? And we had that one brutally honest conversation where I just called you guys and said, hey, call Fred and ask him, what did you do for us today? What did you do for us yesterday? And, asking myself that question, I could say, hey, I shot out 50 emails. Hey, I booked you these 3 shows. Hey, I talked to this booking agent. Hey, we're working on this show. But, when it came down to just like brass tacks of like, what did you actually do? So not saying it's a fond memory, because obviously Fred was a great guy, but it was definitely an interesting time of the band's career, I think, as to like, what are we doing here?
Going our separate ways from Fred was not an easy decision for us. It took us a long time to come to that decision because we're loyal dudes. I'm a very loyal guy. And on top of that, it's not like we were making any money with Punchline. I don't know if we ever made money. Any money we made went back into the band. So Fred really was working for no pay, but at the same time, like nothing that we wanted to happen was happening really. Anything that was happening was just in very small increments, and we needed things to move faster.
It's difficult because I never really was too heavily involved or like in the conversation as far as like, by choice, as far as like what anything business related. Looking back, I had the luxury of not necessarily like getting in on those conversations, not like putting something forward, but honestly, at this point, I was kind of pretty checked out, like getting into drugs and stuff, and definitely wasn't as present in the conversations like this as I should have been. But like, even if I didn't necessarily have anything to add, I had this other darker shit going on, and thankfully these guys like at least took the reins on like where to go next.
That record action, I think, stands up against any of the the first Fall Out Boy records, the stuff that was just starting to kind of gain attention. The Academy Is record that came out. Personally, I think if you guys had a bigger named agent, a bigger manager, I definitely think that was your kind of time to shine. And unfortunately, me not having those relationships definitely, I think, cost the band some success at that time, where you guys really could have capitalized and maybe even been like the trendsetters in that genre. The band was just so good live. The vocals were unbelievable. The songs were awesome. You guys were road warriors, always taking any show possible. It was awesome to see. So I'm definitely a little, bummed out that I couldn't deliver the huge shows, the huge tours that I think you guys deserved at that time that, could have catapulted your career, into like the stardom level. Definitely no lack of work ethic or talent from the band angle, more or less. Unique times, taking advantage of certain situations, missing opportunities, and things like that. That unfortunately, I definitely feel responsible for not being able to deliver at that time. So, sorry, boys. You guys should be headlining arenas right now, but I fucked up. So I'll take that and put that on me.
We were touring a lot though in those years, and we spent a lot of time at Fred's house in Philadelphia. And when I look back now, I feel like Fred was, just such a part of our family at the time, and kind of gave us a home away from home when we were gone. And I'm really appreciative of that. Thanks, Fred. But now I feel like I have to go way back and talk about something. It's really hard to balance the multiple timelines in my head, because everything that was going on, I mean, it was great, because we had been working for years to be playing in these clubs, on these stages with these bands. And we knew like this was our moment to make an impact, because it's not that hey, you won, here's the fan base. It's like, okay, here's an opportunity for you to earn the fan base. I remember this one night, and I'm not even exactly sure where this is in the story, but we were at Johnny's house, a bunch of us, maybe not other guys from Punchline, but just me and my friends, which we were all very much a part of Punchline and extended family. And I heard that Paul, and they were kind of like joking, like, oh my God, did you hear that Paul and this other person snorted bad drug? And it was just so far beyond what I thought anybody was doing. It was just very, very naive, because you just didn't know. I knew things were going on, but I didn't realize to what degree. And I remember hearing this one detail at Johnny's house and just feeling like, oh man, we've crossed the line here.
Producer Sean O'Keefe.
I do remember I remember him being really like talented, and I remember him being missing often. Like he was gone and it didn't know where he went, and I didn't question it at the time, and I later learned that there was a whole other part related to drugs that I was totally unaware of. But I do remember him kind of being like, he would just like take off for a while, or like a whole day or something.
I ended up getting into, pills. Like the story's the same usually for a lot of addicts. They start with pills. And I guess, honestly, at the time, this was during the time when OxyContin was being like pushed through. It was just everywhere. It was just everywhere. Everyone was, not everyone, of course, but it was just so a part of partying, and unfortunately, and so that's how that progression goes. And unfortunately, me and my buddy from high school got into it, and a little too much, and one thing leads to another. You make one compromise, that you're going to do this thing that you swore you'd never do, or like never thought in a million years you would try that drug, right? But you do, and you're in that situation. You do, and you make that compromise, and then the next compromise is so much easier to make, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and it's just like a fast spiral, and it's just crazy. Like we were doing, like I was in a band that I loved, and we were doing the things that that I dreamed of, like my whole adolescent, my whole life almost up until this point. And it's just a shame that this had to be part of the story.
Some stuff started to go down where we would be staying after a show somewhere with a friend or someone we had met, and Paul would say like, hey, I'm going to go take the van to the gas station and get some little cupcakes, which everybody know. If you know Paul, I mean, he does love those little cupcakes. But then he wouldn't come back for a while. And this kind of got worse and worse, where the next morning, Paul's not there and the van's not there. Over time, he kind of stopped being able to explain away where he was or what was going on, and it just was becoming more abundantly clear that we had a real problem on our hands and that he had a real problem on his hands. But this was the first time had ever had somebody so close, or just anybody, be on drugs to this degree or have an addiction problem.
We obviously didn't know nearly as much as we know about addiction now. And at the time, we definitely couldn't understand. We were like, man, do you realize the opportunities that we have now? Why don't you just stop? Please stop. But obviously, that's not how you get past this.
I wanted to help him out, and I felt sort of this big brother role, and I don't know if I told his mom about it or what was going on at some point, but at some point, me and her connected about it, and then, there were times where me and Paul would get into it, and I would, find his drugs or get rid of them or something. It got pretty hairy.
Yeah, Steve definitely tried to get through to me on multiple occasions. He tried being cool about it. He tried being pissed about it, and everything in between. But he definitely was, cared a lot and put in a whole lot of effort into getting through to me. What he didn't understand at the time, is that there was no getting through to me. You know what I mean? So the thing with that drug, with heroin, is that it just turns you into someone else. It puts you into its, it turns you into someone else that serves only it. So naturally that's going to have this cascading downward spiral effect on somebody. And you know what I mean? It's just about everything that they're going to do is in service. Everything I was doing was in service of getting, more drugs, of course. That's not conducive to being anything of worth in life, right? Especially not touring and going, you know what I mean? So but yeah, the point I'm trying to make is that Steve tried just about everything. The other guys tried things too. They, you know what I mean? Definitely made it known. Steve definitely had taken the lead on talking to me about it, right? It was a role that I'm sure he did not want at all, but whatever, did it, took it on. But the other dudes definitely it's not like they weren't involved in trying to get me back or whatever, right?
I didn't know how to talk to him about it. I didn't know how to approach it. I just didn't really have a lot of life experience in anything really, other than, everything that we were doing, which seemed like it was finally starting to go somewhere. And now you do all this, man? What the hell?
It's funny now to me to look back and think about this. I mean, it's of course not. It's just sad, but I mean, it's fun. It's at least funny a little bit that one time when we were while we were recording Action, we were driving. When we were all together, we were driving. Maybe maybe we were going to see Midtown that was playing at the House of Blues or something like that. And anyway, we had gone through a rougher area that I had been to the night previous, copping dope. And there was a guy. The guy that I had seen we were all in the van driving down the road, and this guy sitting on a fire hydrant, screaming, just singing at the top of his lungs. I don't know if he was he was saying a bunch of stuff, and you couldn't not notice this guy, and just about everybody in the van was like, "Holy shit! Look at that guy! This dude's absolutely nuts!" And he just happened to be the guy that I had seen the night previous, and so he probably took the money and got good on his own. He was on a, he was having fun on that fire hydrant. But yeah, it's a mile down the road from the studio, and but that's it's not that's the life that you have to go for. That's not living, So a lot of the times unfortunately, recording Action was an amazing experience, and no other. But unfortunately, a healthy portion of it of my time there was just trying to track down some heroin.
I remember times where it was like Paul's turn to put down guitar or something, and Paul was nowhere to be found. But it was like, if you could get him in the chair to record, he would, give us these great guitar parts and whatnot, and put him on the mic, and you'll get some harmonic magic. But we were having, like, even though we were all together and out in Chicago recording, we weren't all together. It was like Paul was this electron that was just drifting further and further away from the nucleus.
He definitely always had some sort of excuse that wasn't drugs. It was always something else, and I guess that just comes with the territory.
It's like the early point that everyone always says, oh, they just do pills every once in a while, not a big deal, but you kind of always see where that goes, and I kind of had an idea of where that was going to go. And so, like I said, when I explicitly made it clear that I was not on board with this, he kind of went from that point on to hiding everything from me until things became so blatant that he couldn't hide them from us. And there were confrontations and him lying to me a lot and me just wanting to believe him because I just wanted to believe that everything was going to be okay because that's what you want to believe,
It's not like he was doing drugs in the van or something in front of us. It was always, hidden away from us. So it was very hard for us to pinpoint how he was doing or how he was doing with it. And we, he would always tell us that things were okay, and we seemed to be getting to shows and getting through stuff. And it's like we were on a trajectory where we could not stop.
Yeah, there were definitely brief periods where I would clean up a bit and then, fall back into it. It was easier the times to stay away from it when there was music related, when we were able to record, when we were able to get in a room and write music and this stuff. It's the idle time whereas like I feel personally lucky to have a passion in life. There are some people that with addictive personalities that fall into it and unfortunately don't have a passion for something that is able to pull them out.
And everything up until this point and even beyond this, there was like this sense of magic that was going on. We made music from a very special creative place in our hearts, and the songs had so much meaning to us. And then we went out and we played, and we gravitated towards the people that liked us and made decisions based on things that felt good to us. And a lot of things were happening. I didn't know how to handle it. Could have probably had a better bedside manner or attitude about it, but I was definitely trying to do something, trying to look out for him, and because it was very scary to me.
I lived a good 20 miles away from these guys, in Pittsburgh. So when we would come home from a tour that, some tours are hellish because of just being sick and stuff like that. But we would come home and that would have been an opportunity where I could have just stayed on that course. But being a couple weeks away from these dudes, and I'd fall right back into it.
Paul at the core is a very reasonable fella, I think. May seem unreasonable like all of us probably do from the outside for the way that we have, chosen to live our lives. But this made it extra hard for me to process because me and Paul would have talks and conversations about it, and he would just convince me that he was all there or something. Like he could reason with me.
No one had dealt with anything like this before. You're not even supposed to. You're not supposed to even have to worry about this kind of thing. So there's no way of going about it that would have been super successful, and because it was all new to all of us, and there's a lot of shame from me as far as the way I acted during those years and stuff like that. It's true that I was not myself, right? But it's just the most unfortunate thing to have to, really, it's had an addiction and everything. The part that sucks is that I made it their problem, you know what I mean? And like, we all had worked on something for so many years, and then, you know, it's so unfair to these dudes that like it just turned into this other thing. Not at all what they're what they were about, or like any of us were about, really.
We absolutely were trying to give off the appearance that nothing was wrong when, you know, something was majorly wrong. Yet we, you know, kept trying to show up to shows and get on stage and do our thing, and everybody smile. Everything's fine, but things were not fine.
It seems like it was next to impossible that there was anything Steve or any of these dudes could have said to me that would have, you know, gotten the old Paul back. But, you know, I feel thankful to be here talking about it now.
But there was this one time where really seemed like maybe he was turning a corner with it. And this was after Action was out. It was the first time that we went into the recording studio to record a song. Our guy Jaime, who owned the media company that brought you the Rewind DVD, he wanted to make a movie that was an computer animated prequel to Pinocchio called Geppetto's Secret, and he wanted us to make a song for it. But when we needed a song for this movie that Jaime wanted to make, I picked up a guitar and I played the beginning of Changing Lanes.
If you could be anyone, who would you be now? I'm asking you to please think of an answer, and you can't say yourself. Oh yeah.
And I think Paul thought that it was a little hokier, like maybe something that we would have done before he was in the band. But then we went and recorded it, and it's one of my favorite Punchline songs. I think part of the reason that it was super special to me was that Paul had been taking a break from drugs and just seemed like back to himself. And I was so happy, and me and him drove out to Steubenville to Innovation Studios with Mike Ofka, where we recorded this song, and we talked, and I was like, oh my God, like I got my friend back. There's the second verse in that song that Paul sings, and I almost want to say that I wrote the words for him to sing to some degree, but that part of the song kind of just, I always listen to it and I'm like, Paul's singing here about what he was going through at the time.
This place is calming, I'm here too often. I think I need a change of pace. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. Short circuit, rewind, erase it completely. Someone help me, someone save me, someone make me feel at home. If you could be anyone, who would you be now?
I didn't know it at the time when we were recording it, but this was the last song that we recorded with Paul, and the only song post-Action that we recorded with Paul before he left the band.
It was January 15th, 2005, and we were playing a show in Albany, New York with our friends in the Berlin Project, and we got to Albany early, and we got a hotel room because, being Pittsburghers, we wanted to watch the Steelers playoff game. They were playing the Jets.
I was at the skate park venue. Chris and PJ were in our hotel room not far from there, like a Holiday Inn or something.
And it was like a nail biter of a game. And we were all going crazy and celebrating. And Steve's just kind of standing at the door with this dead look on his face and tells me and Chris to come outside. And I think that Chris will agree with this, that I almost feel like I knew what was coming.
And before we even played, a couple hour before we played or something like that, Paul asked me to come talk with him outside, and things were really tense with us. So we weren't really talking a lot. And I remember he wanted to talk with me, and it felt weird. And he told me that he was going to go. He was going to go home, that he was leaving the band and he was done. And I think my response was, we're at a show that we're going to play. You're going to leave before our set? And he was like, yeah, I got to get out of here.
We were in Albany, New York in January, the dead of winter. And, and of course I was dope sick, and this is not a very fun place to be, especially like, when it's cold and, away from home. And, and I had been, I had been doing it plenty before that, but I think this was like sort of at the beginning of a tour, and like at this point, I had done a few tours where like had to just cold turkey it and just be sick, and it's like everybody in the band knew why, but I still thought that the things that I'd say would like. Maybe they'd believe that or something. It just didn't even matter. Like whatever was said, the fact was that like this dude's addicted to heroin and he's dope sick and he's leaving. Whereas I wish I had it in me then to put these guys through another week of like, what the fuck is wrong with Paul, like in the back or whatever, But it's so unfortunate that like these that's just the way it is, like that it had to be that way, and I knew I was doing something terribly wrong. I knew it.
I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I was not expecting all of that, or that he was leaving at that moment. And that, the anger I was talking about just grew exponentially at that point, because he had finally gone all the way and, left us high and dry for good. And that really sucked.
But it's not like it was a surprise, because things were really bad. So I think that we were starting to consider the idea that this might happen, but then it happened, and it was very real, and it was very, very heavy.
People in my life that knew me well and wanted everything good for me, people that even weren't a good influence on me in my life, all knew, what are you doing? Like, what is this about? What do you know what I mean? And I just it's crazy. I didn't listen to anybody. I didn't listen to anything, and I guess I gave up, sort of, right?
He had to keep this thing going, and he bailed on us, and it sucked. And I really, really hated him for that for so long.
I went to the hotel room and I told Chris and PJ, I waited for the play to be over for them to make the field goal, something along those lines, because they were really excited about this football game. And I told them that Paul was leaving, and they were mad. We were all mad.
And that was it. I swung by the hotel room and got my bags and left, and and it was no good. But that's how that ended. Like I said, I mean, I'm definitely fortunate to be sitting here talking about it, and luckily these guys, I like forced this situation on them, and then we just didn't talk for years. And now I play in bands with them, and it's cool. And, I feel very lucky about that. And that, that we're sitting here talking about it right now.
I'm sure I would have lost it no matter what. But a couple of things about this that I remember is, I guess, you'll say whatever to not say that you're doing drugs. But I remember something that was said was that we'd been doing all kind of good tours, and that was all of us putting the work in. But something that I think Paul had said was he didn't want to play skate parks anymore. Like, that was the excuse. This random show we were playing at this skate park was the reason. And when he came back to the room to get his bag, I remember walking down the hall behind him as he walked away, just screaming the worst things you could yell at somebody, just calling him every name in the book, and just, I snapped. And I'm not saying I handled that well, but at that point, that was just a culmination of so many emotions for so long. And, probably not fully at that point understanding what he was going through. And even to this day, I'm sure I don't fully understand what he must have been feeling and how sick he really was. So, in retrospect, I feel bad about it, but, put me back in those same shoes again, and I'm probably going to act the same way.
And that was it. Paul was gone.
And that sucked because he was one of my best friends.
And there we were with shows scheduled, an album we believed in, lives we dedicated to the band. I mean, I think we even had a show the very next day. We still had a good bit of the Action album cycle left, but looking back in retrospect, it really was this moment that marked the end of the Action era.
Next time on A Band Called Punchline.
Words can make you feel like feathers, but all my friends, they know you better. I know we all know the same excuse. It does not make it true.
37 everywhere. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, there is help available and you don't have to do it alone. Reach out confidentially to the National Substance Abuse Hotline or search for them online at samhsa.gov.
Hey everybody, Chris Fafalius here. I hope you're enjoying the A Band Called Punchline podcast. We put a lot of love into this pod and we'd appreciate any love that you could give back. Share it with your friends and family. Give us a 5-star rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, check out our music. We have tons of music wherever you choose to stream it. One really cool place to do that, where you can even get songs that aren't available other places, is on our Bandcamp site, which is punchline.bandcamp.com. You can also go to punchlinemusic.com, where you'll find a bunch of links to places like our website, our TikTok, our merch store, our music special, and even a calculator that will tell you how many days old you are. Don't worry, you got lots of days left, but I hope you all live every day like there's no tomorrow, in a good way. Big thanks to all my bandmates of the past and present, and all our friends who have been along for the journey, who lent their voices to this podcast. We couldn't do it without you. Also, special thanks to my good bud, Jim Legrando. Not only is he the narrator, but he also helps out so much by going through these episodes with a fine-tooth comb to make sure they're enjoyable. So thanks, Jim. And most importantly, thank you. If you made it this far and you're hearing me say this, you really do care, and I can't tell you how much that means to all of us in Punchline, which is why we continue to make music today. Hell yeah.